Hi, I'm Nathan, and today I'd like to talk to you about my first year of IB Language Arts and talk about what I learned and what I gained from the course and some advice that I think might benefit you if you're taking it this year. So the number one thing that I want you to take away from this video, if it's nothing else, is that you should read the books. The book selection for your IB Language Arts course is great. Your teachers put a ton of effort into it, and it really shows in the books that you're going to be reading. I loved every single book that we read, and it pushed my thinking in new and unique directions, and I always grew as a person because of it. So I actually want to walk you through some of the books that we read in our class and how they changed my thinking to hopefully show you how impactful these readings can be. So one of the things that was super unique about our book selection was that we didn't have just a bunch of fiction books or a bunch of nonfiction books, or we weren't grouped into one category. We actually had a really surprising spread across genres, literary styles, and authors. And one of the things that I really learned was how much a book can be different and how the different ways that it's written can have vastly important impacts on how you perceive it. The two books that we read that probably the largest impact on my thinking were Persepolis and Human Acts, because both of them were written so differently from any books I had read before, and specifically any books that I had tried doing literary analysis on before. So Persepolis was written as a graphic novel, and Human Acts was written as a series of short stories, each with different characters and perspectives and ways of writing that gave it so much difference in tone and structure throughout that was so interesting to analyze. They both showed me such unique new forms of writing that I hadn't really been exposed to, and forced me to think about how authors try conveying their message to the readers, and how I as the reader should be looking at these books to try getting the most out of them, and seeing what the author was trying to portray. Specifically with Persepolis, because it was a graphic novel, it was so interesting analyzing how the images and pictures were used to portray the overall image that she was trying to give with the book, and how that built up her argument. It was really cool because the main character of the book being drawn in front of us really helped me to identify with her as a person and kind of add humanity to the entire book. And it ended up helping me structure what I wanted to write my essay about. My final essay ended up being on dehumanization in the news media, and how specifically good representation in media that we consume can help us humanize the stories of others. My favorite line from the essay was probably my topic sentence. Satrapi, an Iranian native, uses her literature to fight the false assumptions of homogeneity in Middle Eastern cultures and to create realistic representations of the fact that in every community there are uniquely personal and cultural identities, even in locations with a perceived monolithic identity. These books changed my opinion of what reading and what literature truly was, and really helped me break out of the mold of where I looked at specific fiction pieces or nonfiction pieces as the author trying to convey something through these same literary devices I had been analyzing for years, and look at the new ways that authors can convey their information to the reader. Next, one of my favorite things that we worked with in our class was Neruda's poetry, and this was super huge for me, because traditionally I don't like analyzing poetry, but specifically with Neruda, we looked at it through the lens of his life and the history that he experienced and how that manipulated his poetry and what he wrote, and it took this subject that I loved, which was history, and added it to the subject that I didn't like so much, which was poetry, and it really changed how I thought about it. My final essay ended up being my favorite one I wrote all year, being about the human spirit and how we're shaped by the traumatic experiences of our lives. I think my favorite thinking that came out of this unit was the quote that I wrote in my essay: "Through our compassion, we can allow more people to see the world like Neruda did, seeing the beauty and light in the natural world, and allow people to see past the faults of our humanity and see the good in those around them." Analyzing Neruda's poetry really changed my mind on how poetry should be portrayed in a society and how I specifically thought of it. It showed me that it could serve a purpose that was much greater than talking about love or hatred, and talk about a society as a whole and how it changed over time. The last book that I want to talk about is Educated, which is an incredible story that was a joy to read, but it really fundamentally shook some of my deep-seated beliefs in society and how we should act as humans. Specifically by portraying this family that had such different beliefs from my own, both religiously and their beliefs about medicine and science in general, it really forced me to look at why I have the beliefs that I have, and look at how I accept the beliefs of others. I remember having this really introspective notebook write about why I thought the way I did about science and medicine and how that compared with Educated. And I remember writing, "Through reading Educated, I have gained a better understanding of what the human side of alternative medicine is, the anecdotes of people who have been saved by it, and the fear that some people have for the modern medical establishment." Educated was overall just a great story that really put humanity into a lot of topics that I had read about and seen on the news, and really put it in a different context, And it was amazing seeing the class discussions that sprung up around it. One of my favorite class discussions that we had was about radical religion in general, and we were able to draw really personal connections with how we had seen religious extremism portrayed in the mass media to this really personal story of these people who deeply believed in their religion and how it impacted them. Educated was just an incredible book with an amazing human story that made me think so much more about the world around us. Now, you've heard some of my reflections on what IB Language Arts gave me, but I'd also like to give you some advice on what I learned and how you can really get the most out of the class, because the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. And by reading and analyzing the books, I was able to gain a much better appreciation of human stories around us and humanity as a whole. So my first piece of advice has to be about your portfolio, your notebook entries. These can easily be something that you don't spend a lot of time on, but I think the more time you spend on them, the more you get out of them. And they can be incredible tools to help you better understand the books and, in general, do better on your essays at the end of each unit. The few things that I'd want to recommend are: 1, to be creative. Do things that you think will help you understand the book. One of my favorite notebook entries was this concept map, which really helped me break down how I wanted to structure my essay and my beliefs about the different characters that were happening in Purple Hibiscus and the overarching themes that I wanted to talk about. 2nd, definitely let your voice show through. In my opinion, these are a reflection of your thinking on the books and how you're interpreting them. So definitely by saying your opinions and walking through those, it can help you better understand the books, and it can help you break down some concepts that you were having trouble understanding. And then 3, just use them as sounding boards. So one of my favorite things was using them to flesh out ideas that I think could possibly be an essay and look at evidence and where they're located in the book and see if I could build a full argument about them or if they were just an interesting thing that I had noticed. The other thing I'd recommend you definitely participate in as much as you can are the discussion groups in class. I loved discussing these books because they gave us so much to talk about, and everyone in the class had a different, unique perspective on what was happening, and hearing all those really helped me understand the full complexities that were happening beneath the surface of these books, and how my views were possibly biasing how I perceived them. I definitely say, number 1, you need to be prepared walking into these groups. If you know what you want to talk about and you have a good idea of the text, you can easily participate, and you can talk about your own thoughts and see how other people's thoughts change yours. And 2nd, feel free to disagree with people. In my opinion, the best discussions that we had were when people were split on how they interpreted a specific part of the book or a specific quote. And by hearing these contrasting viewpoints and why people believed the things that they believed, it really helped me develop a more full understanding of what these books could possibly be telling us. This was especially impactful during Neruda's poetry, where everyone had such different opinions of different lines and devices and how they impacted the poem as a whole. And the 3rd piece of advice I would give is just to truly listen. Listen to what your peers are saying and build that upon your own argument. Don't just try to say specific things to get the points for the class, but truly participate in a discussion, because by building upon other people and coming to a consensus as a group, or a disagreement as a group, you can truly learn from it and take it and build more upon it for your essays. Because that's one of the things that was best for me with these discussion groups. I remember one time we were doing a discussion group for a book that I wasn't especially a big fan of, and one of the things was I didn't know what I was going to write an essay about. I'd kind of written a few things up, but I wasn't really feeling anything. I didn't have any good ideas. And during this discussion group, everything just suddenly clicked for me. And that night when I got home, I went through and rewrote my entire essay from scratch, and I was so much happier with the end result. Because I had heard all these other people's opinions and how they meshed with my own, I suddenly had a new idea of what I wanted to write about and what I wanted to explore within the book. In the end, IB Language Arts, in my opinion, is a class that allows you to learn more about yourself and how you view the world, and exposes you to so many different new perspectives that can be built into your own understanding of the world. By making your own personal connections with the books and the topics that you're covering, you'll get so much more out of it, and you can grow not just as a writer, but as a person in our world as a whole. Mainly, just keep an open mind and truly embrace all the activities that you're doing, because each one is designed to help you with your thinking and help you with your understanding, and each book will talk about a unique, different topic that can change your view of the world in general. But in the end, just have fun, enjoy reading the books, enjoy discussing these topics, and I hope you enjoy your IB Language Arts class.